For breakfast, we're going to Luke's, of course, and my order today is pancakes, scrambled eggs, and bacon. But inspired by the time when Richard visits Lorelai and makes her eat a grapefruit as part of her breakfast, we're also starting with some fruit. And I actually don't really like grapefruit, just like Lorelai, so I settled for a yummy orange instead. I'm sure Richard wouldn't approve, but it tasted delicious. And now on to making our pancakes. I'm starting by melting a bit of butter in my pan. And while it's melting, I'm adding some flour, baking powder, a bit of sugar, and some salt in a bowl. I gave it a mix with a wooden spoon and then cracked my eggs and added the milk in too. And now my batter was melted, so I added that in too. I then whisked it just enough to mix, but I tried to avoid over-mixing, as that can lead to chewy pancakes instead of fluffy ones. I then let it rest for a bit before starting to cook them. I grabbed my non-stick pan and added a bit of batter in. Once the pancake forms little bubbles all across the pancake, it's ready to flip. I continued cooking all of the batter and kept all the cooked pancakes in a baking dish in the oven that I had on very low heat. This meant my pancakes stayed warm until I finished cooking all of them and I was finally ready to eat. While I was cooking my pancakes, I also added some bacon slices on my pan and let them cook for a few minutes on each side until they're nice and crispy and cooked through. And for my scrambled eggs, I cracked all of the eggs in a bowl, whisked them well, and then added them to a pan with a bit of butter to cook. I just stirred them slowly to scramble them, and when they were cooked to my liking, I seasoned with salt and pepper. And I did the seasoning at the end, as I saw adding it too early can affect the texture of the eggs and also make them grey because of the pepper. And now all of my elements are finally ready, so I'm serving a couple of pancakes on my plate, some eggs and bacon. And of course, topping with some maple syrup on top, as that's such a classic combo. Amazing. The pancakes in Italy. And I then realized it wouldn't be a proper Gilmore breakfast without coffee, so I'm making myself some coffee to have with my breakfast, and make sure you stick around to see my reaction to the coffee, as I'm not really a big coffee drinker anymore. Especially black coffee, I never have it like that, and I was just laughing at my reaction when I was editing, so stick around. Lunchtime, and we're back at Luke's for a classic cheeseburger, which feels like it's Lorelai's and Rory's everyday order. I'm starting by making my chips, so I'm cutting a few potatoes in chip sizes. I then added them in a baking pan lined with baking paper and added some olive oil and seasoned with salt and pepper. I gave them a good mix with my hands to make sure they're all coated in the olive oil and spices, and put them in a preheated oven to bake for about 40 minutes. And while they're baking, I'm making my burger, so I'm starting by chopping an onion in small pieces. And ideally I'd want the onion to be tiny pieces, but I'm not very skilled when it comes to chopping onions, so there are some odd big chunks here and there, but yeah, it's fine. I think I need to get a food chopper to save me time chopping too. Anyways, I added my onions in my bowl, seasoned with salt, and then added about a tablespoon of Henderson's relish. Added some pepper and then added about 500 grams of minced beef. I gave it a good mix with my hands and shaped 4 big patties. And now on to cooking them. I added some olive oil in my pan, spread it around, and added all the patties, trying to flatten them out when I put them in my pan. I let them cook for a few minutes and then flipped to the other side. And since I had some leftover onions, I'm adding them in a separate pan to caramelize and add them to my burger too. I just cooked them in some olive oil in medium heat and seasoned with salt. And now on to prepping the burger toppings. I'm starting by chopping a couple of tomatoes in slices. I also love gherkins in my burger, so I'm slicing them in half so they can sit flat on the burger. And we're actually making a homemade burger sauce, as it's super easy and tastes so much better than the store-bought ones. I added some mayonnaise in my bowl, some ketchup and mustard, and I also like to add a bit of the juice that the gherkins come in, plus some paprika. I gave it a good mix, and I usually add a bit more mustard or ketchup after I give it a taste. I also washed a few lettuce leaves and served my caramelized onions in a little bowl. When my burgers and chips were almost ready, I added some bacon on my pan to cook until it was nice and crispy. And now everything was ready, so I added a burger bun on my plate and topped with my burger sauce. I then added some lettuce leaves and tomato slices. I added some caramelized onions and lots of gherkins. I topped with my burger and some shredded cheddar on top. And of course a bacon slice. And is this the biggest burger you've ever seen or what? I don't know how it didn't collapse, but yeah. Anyways, I also served lots of chips on my plate, and I also added a little bowl so I can add some of my burger sauce so I can dip my chips in. And lunch was ready, and I must say Luke really outdid himself on this burger. I'm still a bit full from breakfast, but I'm also hungry. I don't know how to explain it. Let's try the burger sauce. Very good. Mayonnaise is so good. Let me know in the comments, do you like mayonnaise? Because I know some people hate it, and I just don't understand. It's so creamy and nice, but all these things are, relevant. So let me know in the comments, are you a fan of mayonnaise? And do you make your own burger sauce? I'm not sure how I'm gonna eat this massive burger. It's so good. I know it's all over my face, but it's so tasty. The best food is messy food, so I'm gonna go enjoy with some Gilmore Girls, of course. I'm hoping there's a scene with a burger. Yeah, I'm always jealous when I see them. For dessert, we're heading to Weston's Bakery for some decadent chocolate cake. I'm starting by prepping my baking pans by adding some butter all around and some baking paper on the bottom, and then more butter on top to make sure nothing sticks. I then made some buttermilk by simply adding some vinegar in some fresh milk, stirring it and letting it on the side for a bit. I then grabbed a big bowl and added all of my dry ingredients. I added some all-purpose flour, some cocoa powder and sugar, of course. I added some baking powder and salt and gave it a whisk to get rid of any lumps. And now onto a separate bowl, I'm adding all of my wet ingredients. I'm adding some rapeseed oil, eggs and some vanilla extract. I gave it a whisk with my electric mixer and then added the buttermilk in too. I then gave the mixture another mix. I then added the wet ingredients into the dry and gave it a whisk until it was just combined. You don't want to overmix at this stage, as you want to keep as much air in the mixture as possible for an airy and fluffy cake. And of course adding some coffee in the mixture, as it wouldn't be a Gilmore dessert without a bit of coffee in it. Gave it a final mix so all the ingredients are incorporated, and then divided the mixture evenly between the two baking pans. I bake them in a preheated oven until a knife comes out clean, and then let them on a cooling rack to cool completely. And while they're cooling, I'm making my chocolate frosting, so I'm adding my batter in a big bowl and using my electric mixer to whisk it well. I then added some cocoa powder and icing sugar. I also seasoned with a bit of salt and added some heavy cream and a bit of vanilla. I then whisked it well to make sure everything is incorporated and we get a nice soft frosting. I also added a bit more whipping cream to help it blend up to my desired consistency. And this to me looked like the perfect consistency. Taste test. Oh god, it's so good. Now my frosting was ready, I grabbed my Lazy Susan and added a bit of frosting in the middle, as that helps the cake not slide around when you frost it. I then added the cake on top and topped with some frosting. I used my knife to spread it evenly, although the cake was still a bit warm, so don't be impatient like me and let the cake cool completely, as that will make the frosting go on much smoother. I then topped with the second cake, and again I topped with the frosting on top and evened it out. I also added lots of frosting on the sides, again using my knife to make it even all around. Once I had finished all the frosting, I topped with some shredded dark chocolate on top, and my cake was finally ready to cut and enjoy. And this was so decadent, so chocolatey, but the sponge was so light and fluffy. It was really one of the best cakes I've made and tasted. I definitely recommend if you like chocolate cake, and I will leave the recipe on the description box below if you want to recreate it. And let me know how you like it if you make it. And dinner time, we're having another Gilmore favorite, which is pizza, of course. I started by making my dough a few hours before dinner, so to some warm water I added some instant yeast, a bit of sugar and some olive oil. I gave it a stir and let it on the side for a few minutes for the yeast to activate. I then grabbed a big bowl and added some strong bread flour. I seasoned with salt, gave it a stir, and then added the yeast mixture in. I gave it a mix with my wooden spoon and then emptied the bowl in a floured surface so I can knead it for a few minutes. I just take a bit of the dough, bring it towards the center and stretch it out again. I did that for about 5 minutes or until the dough is nice and soft and it doesn't stick to my hands. I then added my dough in the same bowl with some olive oil and covered it with a tea towel to proof for a few hours. In that time, I also prepped all of my toppings for my pizza, and I decided to go for a vegetarian tonight as I felt like I couldn't handle any more meat in one day. Although most of the pizza scenes on Gilmore Girls look like they're having a pepperoni pizza and with no side of a vegetable in true Gilmore style. But tonight I'm doing peppers, onions, mushrooms and olives, which is one of my favorite pizza combos. So I just chopped everything in small pieces, ready to use later. For my pizza sauce, I'm adding some passata in a bowl and topping with some olive oil and Italian style seasoning. I gave it a stir and now we're ready to open our pizza, so I added some flour to my working space and emptied the pizza dough on top. I divided it into two and I opened one of the dough balls in a pizza shape. And I know I'm not a proper pizzaiolo yet and I can't open it just with my hands, so I'm using a rolling pin to make it as thin as I can, as it will also rise in the oven. Once I had rolled it out, I put it on my pizza pan and stretched it out. I added a few tablespoons of my pizza sauce and spread it around evenly. I then topped with lots of mozzarella cheese and then added all of my toppings. I put it in a preheated oven to bake, and while it's baking, inspired by Dean bringing a salad to a pizza night once, I'm also serving myself some green salad to have on one side, as I think pizza and salad is such a great combo. Dean was right. And now my pizza is ready, so I'm cutting it in slices and serving myself some to enjoy with my salad. And this was so yummy. I really enjoyed my homemade pizza to finish this Gilmore Girl day. I hope you enjoyed this video and got some inspiration for some yummy meals. If you did, make sure you give me a big thumbs up and I'll see you on the next one. Okay, bye!